The Eye, an original short story by Katherine Harkins. The documentary's director, Alan Herrera, sold the project to me as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to film a society that has never had any interaction with the modern world, and I jumped at the chance. The two of us and an indigenous culture expert translator traveled to the Sierra Nevada, a mountain range isolated from the Andes in Colombia. Every single environment on the earth seemed to be represented here, from the sandy beaches to the snowy mountaintops. We drove as closely as we could to our destination mountain, and then started our hike. People have tried to climb this mountain for various reasons: scientific, exploratory, political, but they have always met an impenetrable wall of human resistance. Atop this mountain, an isolated society has hidden itself from the world's view since before the Spanish invaded South America. They are the last functioning civilization of pre-Columbian times, the Kogi. As we hike higher and higher, Alan points out evidence of human occupation in a seemingly wild area. The plants are more organized, trees bent in certain ways, and some paths are slightly more worn in than others. It felt off. Alan had warned me before we embarked on this journey about the Kogi. The Kogi have cut themselves off from the rest of the world for a reason. They call us younger brothers, children who do not understand how they take care of the world. Alan had interacted with them before, to attempt to understand them, but this time they reached out to him. They said they had a message they needed to spread. I could hear them before I saw them. There were still signs from the wildlife, but there was a larger rustling coming from above us. The dirt path we walked on slowly grew wider and more worn. Finally, we arrived at the gate. I took out my video camera. The entrance was made of branches straight and held together with a sort of rope. It didn't swing, but someone on the other side lifted and slid it open. Through the lens of my camera, I saw a group of around 10 men, all dressed in off-white robes of varying ages. One man stepped forward and started speaking in a dialect that sounded like none I've ever heard before. Our translator did his job.
In the beginning, the Greek mother divided up the earth. She sent you far away, and in this place she put us. You are the younger brother, and you are killing us. We have asked you here to hear our plea. We are doing the work of the Great Mother, but you are killing her. Stay far away from us and stop killing the earth.
With that, he turned his back and walked into the village. We cautiously followed. The men in the robes sat us down on some benches and indicated that we wait there. Alan informed me that they were going to continue filming in the World House. Although the thatched roof and palm leaf-lined walls are replaced every few years, the foundation of this house has stood there for over 1,000 years. While we waited, some of the younger villagers approached us hesitantly. One came up to my camera and looked at it in interest. I played around with him and showed him the screen and the lens. I showed him how the shutter can open and close, and he laughed in delight. He said a word, pointed at his eye, and blinked repeatedly. Alan had talked about how animism is an important belief in Kogi society, and from then on, everyone in the village called me the Eye. After some time passed, the men in the robes led us into the World House. We sat down on the floor, and the same man from before stood in front of us. He stated, with passion and movement,
We have invited you here to give a warning, to send a message to all of the younger brothers in the whole world. The Great Mother talked and talked, and her teachings have not been forgotten by us. You have lost your purpose. You are taking out the mother's veins, digging up her liver, and cutting out her heart. She has a face, eyes, and ears, and you are cutting them up. She will be sad if you keep on cutting, and if she ends, the world ends. You are bringing the world to an end."
Our translator was silent. I stood with bated breath behind my camera, recording and processing. We left the house. While we were eating lunch, Alan described to me their religious philosophies. The Kogi have people who are like priests, called the mamas. These men are picked before birth by other mamas and spend their entire lives from birth to the age of 18 in a cave. Mamas and family can enter this cave, but the mamas must never leave. The cave is completely dark, and inside other mamas teach the protege the way of their culture. And inside, other mamas teach the protege the ways of the culture. At the age of 18, they can finally leave the cave and are masters at divination. Alan has a theory that their time in the cave affects them mentally and physically, and that is what produces their visions and ways of thinking. The man we were communicating with was the elder mama. We walked around the village, admiring their huts and their work with stones. They have accepted help from outsides before. Iron tools were valuable, but shoes were not allowed because they break their contact with the earth. We interviewed a few more villagers, young and old. They claimed that their average life expectancy was around 90 years old, and one villager's grandfather lived to be 102. People seemed simultaneously fascinated and bewildered by my camera, the eye. Finally, we settled down for the night in the tents we had brought and fell asleep. I woke in the middle of the night to the rustling we heard on our way into the society. Curious, I stepped outside of my tent. In front of me was a fairly young man, eyes wider than I have ever seen before. We stare at each other, before he picks up my hand. He touches my hand to my eye, then my hand to his eye. He said in broken Spanish,
"You think you see us? I see you. Good luck. You will need it."
He left, leaving me bewildered. To this day, I'm still not sure what I gained from this trip. The Kogi, and especially the mama, left me with an uneasy feeling. They said that without them performing their duties, rain would not fall and the world would die. I'm not sure if this is true, but I do feel like the Kogi are more important. Maybe more so than any of us will ever really know. They have some kind of sight that I cannot comprehend, and to be completely honest, looking back now and thinking of those stark places and those stark people, those eyes that know, well, I don't know if I want to understand it.
Thank you for listening to The Eye, written by Katherine Harkins and narrated by our guest for the week, Abigail Lambert. Katherine Harkins is a Massachusetts girl born and bred. After attending American University in Washington, D.C., she has been traveling and teaching ever since, with major stints in Spain and California. She spends most of her time obsessing over her beloved dog Béni and a variety of video games and television series. All sound effects and backing tracks for this story were made in-house by Prose. Abby and I hope you have enjoyed this story, and we hope you'll stick around for our final story of the week this week, Bridget Evangeline Sellers.